Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
One, engage!
Hello everyone out there in Star Trek land. This is Star Trek from the Holodeck, the Lower Decks edition, and I'm your host and captain, Michael Flores. If you are new to our shows, we cover a very wide variety of Star Trek content, and you can find our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search From the Holodeck. Our preferred podcast provider is iTunes. And we'd love for you to give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. It helps our show grow and get seen by more people. And if you happen to be watching us on YouTube, please click that subscribe button and give it us a like, because it also triggers algorithms. We are trying to get the YouTube thing going. In the studio and on the bridge is David Sabal as well. Hello.
How's it going?
Are you ready? Are you ready for this discussion?
Oh, it's Lower Decks, dude. And I'm sorry. This series basically makes me want to constantly say, I want to be an ensign for life. Because
So you want to be like Ensign Kim, a
you know
lifer.
what? It's not so bad when you think about it.
All I'm saying, Dave, is that they better, because it's only a matter of time before we get an Ensign Kim reference in Lower Decks, and he better still be an ensign, just for the ongoing joke. Do not make him a lieutenant.
Oh,
please.
dude.
No.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
You got to keep that ongoing joke. Now, it would be realistically, honestly, when he returns home finally, he probably would get a promotion. But come on, for the purposes of humor, please make him an ensign.
Oh, it would be so hilarious. It would be so hilarious. And imagine the season finale ends with a new Lower Decks crew member joining the thing, and it's Ensign Kim.
Oh, wow. David, that is the best idea you've ever had. Please make Ensign Kim a part of the Lower Decks crew.
And it's like you can make it an entire running gag that out of all the characters they could have pulled, Kim is the one who stays in the Lower Decks.
Yeah.
And it would be so awesome.
It is funny, and I wouldn't mind that. I do think that would be humorous, but at the same time, because this is canon, it would also make me a little sad because.
But why, dude?
He should be promoted at some point. Come on.
This show has proven, especially in this episode, of how it is so much better to be part of the Lower Decks, to be an ensign for life, because when you're given the responsibilities of higher ranking.
Yeah.
Higher ranks suck.
I don't know. I would listen. You got
you got to go to parties that basically look really boring.
But also you get premium holodeck, placements that you don't have to wait in line. You get to have first dibs,
First dibs on everything.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to be breaking down and discussing episode 5 of the second season of Star Trek Lower Decks, titled An Embarrassment of Dooplers. This episode is definitely one of the better ones to date.
Yes.
There was a lot of character development in this episode, pairing Mariner once again with Boimler, Tendi with Rutherford, and then using the bridge crew to be the catalyst that gets the narrative moving in the right direction. And then a lot of this development happens while revolving around this catalyst, around this event. And I like that the writers make room as much as possible for Mariner's continued growth as a person and a character. Yes, this is one of those episodes that was largely about everyone, but at the center, it was about Mariner. And I want to say this episode was the first that really let her. And we have had episodes where we have seen that vulnerability, but this is the episode that really let that vulnerability show.
Yes.
Because she openly admitted her feelings to Boimler about how she felt. We've had these moments before. We've seen her, overcompensate due to her issues of self-esteem, which we saw that a few episodes back when she was talking about the men. Oh, I love men like that, and just always lying about things to make herself, not. I should say not to make herself be hidden necessarily, but to not show who she really is to people, even her own friends like Tendi and Rutherford and Boimler. Up, of course, until this point where she finally was able to let that whole thing go, and show her true emotions. I mean, she's a bit of a narcissist and neurotic, but at the end of the day, she's aware of these traits and she wants to work through them. But only as far as it concerns Boimler.
Yes. And the thing that they've been hinting at is Mariner has had this hurt feelings since Boimler left at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone constantly, it's been like a subtle joke they've been doing every single episode of how Mariner would treat Boimler badly because Boimler left. And we finally get a true answer that it's more than just, Boimler just leaving. It was the fact that
the way he left.
He didn't say anything. He just basically pieced out, didn't say anything after everything. And Mariner was actually legitimately hurt because of that.
Yeah, and I like that because it shows that she truly does have feelings. She does have emotions, but it's just hard for her to show them.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a very important element to bring to the forefront of Star Trek, because Star Trek has always been about the human condition. It has, among other things, but that's definitely been one of its core elements. And to use Mariner in such a way to help people relate, because there are a lot of people out there that are afraid of showing emotion.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And the fact that, and it wasn't just, okay, now is a convenient time for Mariner to show her feelings and show a display of emotion. No, it was because, and this is, again, the main aspect of this episode was about friendship and community. And it was about friendship. That's the reason why she was willing to finally express herself, because she knew that her friendship with Boimler was finally, it was coming under pressure.
It was at its tipping point.
Right, because of how she felt and he felt, and they weren't communicating about it. It was actually affecting their friendship, and she knew that. And because Boimler is very important to her, she finally decided to just get it out there, because she knew that if they didn't, their friendship would continue to deteriorate.
Yes, and that in itself is a very relatable thing for many people out there, because it is a thing where communication is easier said than done.
Yeah, and communicating isn't just, talking to someone. Communicating is about expression and feeling vulnerable and, having thoughts and opinions, and then having those thoughts and opinions possibly not be received kindly. I mean, that's the art of communication, or I should say the risk that people take when they communicate, because and that's why so many people are afraid, because they don't know how it's going to be taken. Will there be judgment? Will people look at you differently if you are open about certain things?
That was the brilliance of this episode, because it took Mariner's feelings, and without her coming out and literally, saying it in a monologue or a narration, but the whole idea of making the episode tied together with that concept. I mean, even with the thing with the Dooplers, dude, was hilarious, and that in itself, the situation with the Dooplers mirrored what we saw with Mariner and Boimler, where self-esteem, and also,
I mean, that's
having to walk around on eggshells and everything.
Yeah, is it, dude? It's really good. This is where Lower Deck shines, and we've had some fun episodes this year. But this is what I was talking to you off air, if you remember, before, because I don't want to always be negative and rip things apart. And I've liked this season, but I feel like this season has missed these types of episodes, which is what a large part of the second half, and maybe that's why we're getting into this now, of last season was really about. These strong episodes are really about our characters, and the way the Doopler was used as well. I mean, it was a guy that duplicated himself when he was under high stress, issues of self-esteem, self-worth, caring about how people perceived him. It's inferring how to the audience how Mariner feels in a lot of ways. So it's a very it's a very smart episode, to be completely honest with our listeners. It really is.
Especially in this episode, because you have all storylines dealing with this centralized concept of communication and how
Friendship, communication,
and how everyone connects.
Yeah.
The thing with and they do it in different ways that it doesn't seem like they're just rinse and repeating, because they do the core concept of the episode wraps around Mariner and Boimler, but then you have like the Doopler thing, like I mentioned, and you have the stuff with Rutherford, dude, was awesome. Because I'm sorry, as an old school Star Trek fan who grew up with the toys and everything, I felt so much like Rutherford in this episode.
You're such a nerd, David.
Because like the fact that he wasn't able to finish the model.
Yeah.
And then you find out that basically Tendi was doing it on purpose because this was the only way she could figure out to hang out with him.
This is something they did as friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I
and
agree.
at the end, Rutherford realizes it. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really cool. And it's that was the situation that made me realize what the core idea of this episode was.
Yeah. Yeah, deep friendships is one of those core elements of Star Trek, and that's why this episode really worked, because friendships have always been used to infer meaning and bring the context of the immediate story to the forefront when it concerns Star Trek. I mean, you have a deep sense of community is a wonderful statement to begin with, and I think it would be remiss of us not to take this moment to differentiate community from tribalism, because there are people who confuse the two, because Trek has never been tribal. And I feel like this current time in history, it's very important to understand the differences when we see tribalistic behavior arise or arisen. Is that how I'm saying? Am I saying that correctly?
Arisen.
Let me take two on that, because I don't like how that sounds. We are seeing the rise, there we go, of tribalistic behavior in this country. So it's important to differentiate the two. Community is how people congregate under common understanding, manners, ethics, tradition, and sometimes law. Yeah. Whereas tribalism is often a socially, ethically, and politically cohesive group of people that shun other tribes, and more often than not, against the teachings. They are against the teachings and ideologies of other tribes. So that's not Star Trek, that latter.
Yeah.
But the former...
Tribalism.
The former is very much a part of Star Trek community. So as a Star Trek fan, I really appreciate the inclusion of these elements, because you see the community strength really come through in an episode like this.
Well, that's
specifically because of where the narrative took us by the end. Having the entire Cerritos crew congregate at that dive bar and realize this is how it should be. In the end, this is what matters. And ultimately, it's paving that road that we mentioned last season, and that this season's moving past. You had this dysfunctional family in the beginning, and you see how they are working through the dysfunction and becoming a legit community and family, a bit of a work in progress.
Yeah. And honestly, this episode really showed the talent that Mike McMahon and his writer's pen really have when it comes to writing Star Trek storylines. Because he could have ended it there, but then, just to take it even further and showing that Mike McMahon understands and really believes in Star Trek.
Right.
He connects it to the one thing that we as fans all know, connecting it to the story of Kirk and Spock.
I love it.
And all of a sudden, in the very end, you find out that the bar was the place where Kirk and Spock always hung out as friends, hanging out. And then everything about community, communication, and friendship all convey in this one bar that originated because of Kirk and Spock, the original pair, the original examples of
a deep friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really does show that Mike McMahon loves Star Trek. He
Yeah.
understands it.
And
It's not lip service.
it's also clarified a few things when it comes to how Boimler and Mariner, the status of their friendship, because I feel like this episode clarified that it isn't a romantic
Yes.
in any way. That this is just, they are truly best friends. Yeah, at a very intimate level. And I love it because you're right. Bringing all of this aspect, the elements of, Rutherford and Tendi, which I thought was, as you mentioned, was just as impactful as the Boimler and Mariner story. We see Rutherford struggling with his own issues of self-esteem. Again, another element that's connected. He's been struggling all season with the notion of possibly not being as good as his former self. He's been having a bit of an existential crisis, which came to a head in this episode. And it shows the importance, yet again, of community and friendship by utilizing Tendi to help Rutherford through his problems. There are moments that are just heart-touching, like how Rutherford and Tendi, as you had said, work on a model but never finish because they want to have something to do together and not be bothered by others. And then bringing this entire idea completely together, as you mentioned, with the names of Kirk and Spock etched into the bar where Boimler and Mariner were sitting. I feel like that was just an excellent way to frame the importance of these Trek friendships and to clarify exactly what they were doing in this episode. But David, it does beg the question, when were Kirk and Spock together and considered not important? We know that Lower Decks is canon.
Yes.
So are they suggesting that Kirk and Spock had started their friendship long before Kirk became captain of the Enterprise?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing I think even like when Star Trek got rebooted, they kind of showed that there was
Are you talking about the Kelvin timeline?
The Kelvin timeline.
Yeah.
There was a start of a relationship between Kirk and Spock, whether it was as rivals in the Academy or,
But that also was a timeline completely
different.
Yeah.
But it goes into even the idea that universally as Star Trek fans, we kind of gravitated towards, which was the idea that Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are destined. They are destined to be together.
They're
because
fate, yeah.
It's fate. It's something that they may be separated in different timelines, but somehow fate will bring those
Their
three.
friendship supersedes fate.
Yes.
I fucking love it. Yeah, that's the thing I loved about Kelvin timeline.
And that's what I love. Yeah.
Yeah.
That basically the Kelvin timeline basically showed was like the importance of that relationship of those three.
Yeah.
And ever since then, if you think about it, in a lot of stories, even in the comics or the books that have come out, you see that this relationship between Kirk and Spock and McCoy have almost become kind of like a holy trinity for Star Trek. Like it is fated to be, no matter what. Their lives have to cross at some point, and they're going to be brought all together because that's their community, that's their friendship.
So do you think, and this is getting into speculative areas here, and usually we don't do this type of talk on Lower Decks because they don't get into the more important things, like meaning the ever expanding world of Star Trek, as much as, let's say, Discovery does. I mean, Discovery's paving new trails completely.
But they're in the future, though. Remember, they're in the future.
Right. And I'm saying that you do, and yes, they have to be careful when you're dealing with an area that's confined by what we do know and what we know of the past and what we know of the present. So you're in a sandbox with giant walls.
Yes.
So you have to be careful. However, I mean, this could lead into what we talked about during our Star Trek Day show, where there's a possibility that we may see a younger Kirk.
I have that written in my notes.
In Strange New Worlds, and they meet and start becoming friends a lot sooner than we've all assumed. Which doesn't mess up canon in any way. I mean, it would make sense that they know of each other, and maybe they don't have that bond that they would. No, because I feel like if they're etching their names in a bar
at that point
when they are not important, then this bond would have to have started much sooner. Yeah,
Because
which as a Star. Are you okay with that as a Star Trek baby?
absolutely.
Are you okay with that? Because I'm okay as long as it's done the right way.
as long as it's done in the right way, and honestly, that idea just strengthens the one core concept of all of Star Trek. And like it's always been the one thing that we've always said. They cannot break certain core concepts of Star Trek with this new era.
Yeah.
And one of the core concepts that, as I said, is kind of turned into like a holy trinity is you do not mess with McCoy, Spock, and Kirk and their relationship as friends, becoming brothers, becoming family.
What if they turn them gay? Oh, come here, Spockish.
Kirk is bisexual, but hey,
Well, listen, there's always been rumors that he was.
he was. but that's the thing is kind of like whatever they do, they just have to actually keep emphasizing the fact that this is not about a romantic relationship because there's so many different types of relationships out there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this relationship is pure. It's innocent. It's basically the core concept of being friends.
Yeah.
And like
And what it really means.
and what it truly does mean to be friends.
Yeah.
And especially if they were to do that in Strange New Worlds, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because now with the thought process that okay, we're gonna introduce Ensign Uhura and
In Strange New
in
Worlds.
Strange New Worlds,
Right.
it opens the door that basically we can introduce some of the original crew
Yeah.
as ensigns.
And we're getting off topic here, but Dave, you are right. And it would feel a bit weird for us to have people like Uhura and Spock, and then we pretend Kirk doesn't exist.
and Kirk doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But like that's why, as I said, is like it makes after I watched this episode and I thought about it, actually connecting Lower Decks to Strange New Worlds would be kind of cool because like yes, Spock at this point is on the Enterprise, and he is the science
The
officer.
point in Strange New Worlds.
yeah,
Yeah.
you could still introduce Kirk as an ensign, and they could still have have rapport with each other. But Kirk's an ensign, so it would
we'll see.
actually would strengthen the bond, and I can honestly see a scene from Strange New Worlds playing out like how they kind of said it did in Lower Decks. You know, Spock, who doesn't say anything, he's very quiet, and Kirk, who is just bombastic and drinking all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was what the story was about this week. Friendship, community, issues of self-esteem, vulnerability. But moving over to story C, the Cerritos bridge crew was used to not only strengthen idea of community and friendship, but they were used as the catalyst for all the craziness of this episode, which was probably, and I've been thinking about this now for the last couple of days, I think this type of craziness rivals the episode where what was that character that wanted to reach enlightenment.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think this episode reaches that type of silliness, and I love it. The Cerritos' task was transporting a Doopler emissary to Starbase 25, with Dooplers being a species that create duplicates of themselves when they become agitated.
No, when they become nervous.
Nervous or
Nervous.
agitated, isn't it? Like
No, because when they get agitated, that's when they actually unduplicate.
that's right. Yeah, she uses that against them. That's right. So to prevent the hassle of dealing with duplicates, the crew has been stressing themselves to accommodate their diplomatic passenger. That's the setup. And it was legitimately funny as hell. It was creative, unique, and original. It did remind me, when I say original, I mean original to Star Trek, because it did remind me of the Mr. Meeseeks episode in Rick and Morty.
Yes.
But this is what I had said last week to you, David, when we were off air. I want to start seeing more new things from Lower Decks. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate the references. I appreciate that this series is designed to be fun, and I'm okay with that. I get that, and this Star Trek series, Lower Decks, is fun in that way. But also, I don't want it to fall into the comfort zone of simply being satire, and parody. Like, if this is canon, then let's do some stuff with it as well. Let's move the story of Star Trek forward in a bigger way as well, in terms of the bigger picture of Star Trek. And the fact that this is a new alien fits the bill, in my opinion. It fits the definition of what I wanted. The Doopler is a new character in Star Trek that we've never seen before, and I'm happy with that, because I would love to see more of that in Lower Decks. You know, the introduction of new species. You can keep giving us the references and the callbacks, but also give us these new things.
Yeah, and it's so cool because, to me, especially with
I'm all about the Doopler, dude.
the Doopler, it reminds me of like those episodes in TNG when Picard has to be the emissary and he has to do all these weird things.
Yes.
Like wear the headdress.
Yes, right, yeah.
Learn how to speak like them and everything. And do you notice that in those episodes, they went out of their way to make the aliens stand out?
Yeah.
Like they're totally unique and different. And here they do it again. But this time it's the Lower Decks crew. It's not the TNG crew. It's the Lower Decks crew taking a page from TNG and saying, okay, we're going to create our own alien to create this type of story to tell our theme about communication and community, and create an alien race that is emotionally sensitive.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's so awesome because it harkens back to TNG still, but it's still so original because they took the risk and gamble and created an alien that fits their story theme.
Yeah. So outside of all that, we also were given the references and something's new yet again, and that's City Alpha 4. We've never heard of City Alpha 4, and if it sounds familiar, it's because City Alpha 5 is where Khan was abandoned or dropped off, his people from the original series. Originally, it was a habitable planet, and then City Alpha 6, I believe, had blown up and caused City Alpha 5 to shift its orbit, and then it became a barren wasteland, and that's why Khan was so adamant about getting revenge on Amra.
And the Federation mistakenly relabeled City Alpha 5 as City Alpha 7.
Yeah, remember, thanks, Chekhov. City Alpha 5. City Alpha 5. I fucking love Star Trek. Also, the shampoo bottles of Data was funny.
Oh, yeah.
And the comment, is this all Data? There could be some lures in there.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, is like, it's intelligent joke writing.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so Starbase 25 was first mentioned on Star Trek, the animated series. So yet again, here's a connection that brings something that's not considered canon and recontextualizing it in such a way that it does bring it into canon. We talked about this. I can't remember what show we talked about this on, but we had talked about that the animated series is technically not considered canon. However, throughout the years, all these writers from Discovery, from Enterprise, I believe, not Picard yet, they are using elements from the animated series that's then by default, or not by default, what's the word I'm looking for? By their actions are making these things now canon.
Now canon, yeah.
Which is kind of cool. I do like that. So Starbase 25 was first mentioned in the Star Trek, the animated series, in the 14th episode of the first season, the Slaver Weapon. And it also includes the Kzinti, I want to say, that's how you pronounce it, which is a species of alien that is represented among the ranks of the Cerritos crew that we saw in this episode specifically. So there's our connections to past Star Trek, and
it's just not a connection. They added to the mythos behind it. They essentially took something, and they connected it, but then they added on to it, which was I personally like it when people do that, because like me and you we've always kind of criticized people writing Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Easter eggs. Oh, it's just in the background. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's your Easter egg. Fantastic. Do something with the Easter egg. Add to it.
Or
add to
a
the
reference,
mythos.
yeah.
Reference. Add to it. Give us something more.
I mean, also, we do get to a point. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, that's why I kind of quit covering all the references. Because what other Star Trek show do we do that with? We don't. Because when does it become a reference or just a part of Star Trek? It's like going outside and noticing that I have a grass lawn, right, Dave?
Yes.
And then I notice that my neighbor has a grass lawn. Oh, look at this reference to my lawn. No, it's just a part of the world. It's just a part of life. And that's where I'm at right now with Lower Decks. And I'm juggling between what we should talk about in the way of reference and what is just a part of Star Trek. You know? So I feel like there's a lot of clickbait articles out there that do try to overhype references and Easter eggs.
Because it's the hot button. It's what gets people's attention. Oh, did you see the secret
clickbaity.
meaning behind
Yeah.
this?
Oh, secret meaning behind Starbase 25. Oh. Yeah. All right. So let's move into our final thoughts. We are at that time. David, why don't you start us off as well as give me your RMD score?
I'll start off with my RMD score this time because I really like this episode.
Mhm.
This episode is so much different than the last episode, where I love the last episode because of the dark humor that they did in there. But here, this is where we truly see the talent of the Lower Decks crew. And a crew as in the writers and the producers, Mike McMahon and his staff. Right away, this is a 90 for me. I like it because it pushes the story of Mariner and Boimler forward, and not only those two, but the entire crew. Do you realize, Mike, out of all the new shows we've gotten, Lower Decks is the one show that I can pinpoint where I know all the crew members, all the characters matter,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't take a season for us to get to know them.
Right.
It takes 2 episodes.
Well, that's also the benefit of having an episodic, self-contained
Show.
show.
Yeah. And like,
It's hard to do that with a serialized series that is focused on essentially one character. And I know what you're talking about. You're talking about Star Trek Discovery.
Discovery, not just Discovery. I mean, if you think about it, look at Picard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we rag on Picard all the time, but one of the things that is a weakness of Picard when you look critically at it,
Mm-hmm.
you do not get connected to the crew because, like,
No.
there's nothing there to actually make us care about them.
Right.
Here, Lower Decks, Mike McMahon has made sure to pay attention to every single character that he has introduced to this show. And in this one, this is the first episode out of Lower Decks where I feel every single crew member, down to even the officers, the bridge crew, gets their moment to shine, to actually say, "Oh yeah, seeing Jack Ransom's reaction to everything was hilarious."
Well, dude, Shax too. When
Shax.
the Dooplers first started duplicating and they're all trying to calm him down, and all you do, Shax doesn't say anything. He just gives him a thumbs up, like everything's okay, dude. That's it. And you see, it's just in the background. It's smart because I like that. They're not drawing attention to certain things, but that doesn't mean they don't give us the details with the animation. Just the little things that technically having Shax give you a thumbs up and a smile, it doesn't matter if he's there or not, but it adds so much.
Adds so much to him.
Yeah.
And this is the most I've ever seen them give us with Captain Beckett, with Mariner's mom, the actual captain. Yeah. I truly felt for her because she has to deal with this Doopler who, any single little thing, he suddenly thinks that it's the end of the world.
Listen, I know people like that in real life.
Oh, yes, I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you do.
A lot of them are on Twitter.
But, like, it is very, very taxing, and it's walking on eggshells. It is the roughest thing by far.
It's literally Twitter.
So, like, this episode is right now my favorite out of the entire season.
This entire episode is an allegory for the people on Twitter.
On Twitter. Oh my God, you are right.
I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so you're giving it a 90%.
90%.
Okay, are you ready, Dave? I'm giving this episode. I guess we're definitely we're differing here. I'm giving this episode a 96%. I feel like it's the strongest episode of the season. It is benefiting from all the work from the episode because it definitely accumulates to this point and it's getting us ready for the second half of the season. But yeah, it's a 96%. I think it's very strong. There's a lot of the things that have been over the years have become a part of the Star Trek values, if you will. You know, friendship, strong sense of community. So I feel like it was a really good job just bringing everything together in this episode. So I'll keep it simple. 96%. But now, the rest of the season, my expectations are now higher. And we do know that a lot of big things are coming up. Star Trek Day did announce via Mike McMahon's panel that they are getting bigger and bigger over the second half of the season.
God, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do. So this does bring us to the end. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.